The explosion shattered the morning silence like a fist through glass. Lieutenant Sarah Chen dove behind the concrete barrier as debris rained down on the field hospital courtyard. Her stethoscope swung wildly around her neck, and the coffee she'd been savoring moments before now splattered across the dusty ground in dark streaks. Incoming wounded. Sergeant Rodriguez's voice crackled through the radio static. Multiple casualties, ETA 3 minutes. Sarah's hands moved with practiced precision, checking her medical kit even as another explosion thundered in the distance. The familiar weight of her trauma shears, the cool metal of her forceps, the reassuring bulk of pressure bandages, everything in its place. Everything is ready. Around her, the field hospital erupted into controlled chaos. Nurses emerged from their stations like soldiers responding to battle stations. Because that's exactly what they were. "Chun," Dr. Martinez called out, his voice cutting through the noise. "You're on triage today. Think you can handle it?" The question stung, just as it was meant to. Sarah had been assigned to this forward operating base in the Kurdish mountains for 3 months now, and still the medical staff treated her like she was fresh out of nursing school. Never mind that she'd graduated summa cum laude from Johns Hopkins. Never mind that she'd spent 2 years in Detroit's trauma centers before volunteering for this deployment. To them, she was just another nurse. "Copy that, doctor," she replied, forcing her voice to remain steady. "I'm ready." The first truck roared into the compound, its engine screaming in protest. Sarah positioned herself at the receiving area, her trained eyes already assessing the blood patterns on the vehicle's exterior. Arterial spray on the passenger side. That meant at least one major vessel compromise. The truck's doors flew open, and chaos spilled out. "Got a penetrating chest wound here," Medic Johnson shouted, hauling out a stretcher. The soldier on it was young, couldn't be more than 20, with a sucking chest wound that made Sarah's stomach clench. But her hands remained steady. "Bay 2, she called out, directing Johnson toward the surgical prep area. "Tell Dr. Martinez possible tension pneumothorax." A second stretcher emerged. This one carried a Kurdish fighter, a woman about Sarah's age with shrapnel wounds peppering her left arm and face. Her eyes were alert, tracking movement, a good sign. "Bay 4, Sarah directed, irrigation and debridement." The third stretcher made her pause. Another Kurdish fighter, this one older, with a massive head wound that had soaked through multiple field dressings. His pupils were fixed and dilated. No response to voice or touch. Sarah's training kicked in. In triage, you saved who you could save. Resources went to the viable patients first. "Expectant care," she said quietly to the medic. "Make him comfortable." It was the hardest part of the job. The part that haunted her dreams, but there was no time for reflection. More trucks were arriving, their diesel engines adding to the cacophony of the compound. Sarah threw herself into the rhythm of assessment and decision-making that had become second nature. Penetrating abdominal wound, immediate surgery. Fractured tibia, urgent, but stable. Concussion with no other apparent injuries, delayed treatment. Each decision carried the weight of a human life. Each choice meant someone lived or died based on her judgment. Nurse Chun. Dr. Martinez appeared at her elbow, his surgical mask pulled down around his neck. "The chest wound from the first truck, good call on the pneumothorax. We got a chest. Tube in just in time. The praise should have felt good. Instead, it just reminded her of how surprised everyone seemed when she did her job correctly. "Just doing my job, doctor." "Well, keep it up. We've got reports of more wounded coming in. Apparently there's some kind of coordinated attack happening up in the mountains. Multiple villages under fire." Sarah nodded, but something in his tone made her look up from her clipboard. Dr. Martinez was looking northeast, toward the mountain. Peaks that rose like jagged teeth against the sky. His expression was troubled. "What is it?" "Intel says it's not just random violence. Someone's targeting specific locations." Medical facilities, schools, civilian shelters, he met her eyes. There, trying to break the people's will to resist. A chill ran down Sarah's spine that had nothing to do with the mountain air. She'd heard stories from other deployments, dailies of snipers who specialized in hunting medical personnel. It was a violation of the Geneva Convention, but that didn't stop some combatants from viewing medics and nurses as high-value targets. Are we, she started to ask, safe? As safe as anyone can be in a war zone. Dr. Martinez managed a grim smile. But maybe keep your head down today, Chun, just in case. The radio crackled to life again. Base, this is Falcon 2. We've got eyes on smoke rising from the Kadir village clinic. No response to radio calls. Sarah felt her blood turn to ice. Water. Kadir village was only 12 kilometers north of their position. She'd been there last month as part of a mobile medical unit, providing vaccinations and basic care to the children. She remembered their faces bright, curious, full of life despite the war that raged around them. Falcon 2, this is Base. Came the reply. Can you confirm the nature of the smoke? Base, that's a negative. Too much terrain in the way for visual confirmation. But ... Static filled the channel for a moment. Base, we're picking up radio chatter. Sounds like our friends from the north are celebrating something. Sarah's hands tightened into fists. They're friends from the north. That was military speak for the enemy forces that had been conducting increasingly bold attacks against civilian targets. Dr. Martinez noticed her expression. You okay, Chun? I was at that clinic last month. There are families there. Children. She looked up at him. We have to do something. We have to do our jobs, he replied firmly. Which means staying here and treating the wounded who come to. U.S., we're medics, not infantry. Sarah nodded, but her mind was already racing. The Kurdish fighters she'd treated over the past few months had shared stories with her, tales of a sniper who'd been terrorizing medical personnel throughout the region. They called him the White Death, after the Finnish sniper from World War II. He was systematic, patient, and deadly effective, and according to the stories, he had a particular hatred for foreign medical workers. Another explosion, this one closer. Close enough to rattle the windows of the medical tents and send a flock of birds spiraling into the sky. All medical personnel. This is Commander Walsh. The base commander's voice came through the facility-wide speakers. We've received intelligence indicating possible sniper activity in the area. All outdoor movement is to be minimized until further notice. Medical staff will continue operations, but should avoid unnecessary exposure. Sarah looked around the compound. The concrete barriers that had seemed adequate this morning now looked pitifully thin. The medical tents that had felt safe and professional now seemed like fabric targets in a shooting gallery. But they had a job to do. The radio crackled. Again. Base, this is Medevac 7. We're en route to your position with multiple critical patients. 8:15 minutes. Dr. Martinez sighed. Chun, I need you to prep the surgical bay. Looks like we're going to be busy. Sarah headed toward the surgical area, her mind still churning with thoughts of Kadir village and the sniper who might be watching them even now. She joined the military medical corps to save lives, to make a difference in a world gone mad with violence. She hadn't signed up to be hunted. But as she checked the surgical instruments and prepared the operating area, Sarah found herself thinking about something her father had told her years ago. He'd been a Marine, deployed to Iraq during the worst of the insurgency. In war, he'd said, everyone's a target. The only difference is whether you choose to be a victim or a fighter. At the time, she'd been 17 and planning to go to nursing school. The words had seemed abstract, philosophical. Now, with the sound of distant gunfire echoing off the mountains and the knowledge that someone might be watching her through a rifle scope, they felt like a prophecy. Sarah finished her preparations and looked out toward the mountains. Somewhere up there, in the rocks and shadows, a killer was hunting. He'd already struck at Kadir village, and if the intelligence was correct, he wouldn't. Stop there. The thought should have terrified her. And part of it did. But another part, a part she didn't entirely recognize, felt something else entirely, a cold, calculating anger that reminded her she was more than just a nurse. She was a United States Navy hospital corpsman. She'd sworn an oath to preserve life and to serve those who fought to protect freedom. And if that sniper thought he could terrorize her, patients and her fellow medical workers without consequence, he was about to learn just how wrong he could be. The sound of helicopter rotors filled the air as Medevac 7 approached the landing zone. Sarah took one last look at the mountains, then headed out to receive the wounded. She had work to do. What do you think will happen next? Share your predictions in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more thrilling stories. The helicopter touched down in a whirlwind of dust and rotor wash, its medical evacuation markings stark against the desert camouflage paint. Sarah shielded her eyes as she ran toward the aircraft, her medical bag bouncing against her hip. 3 stretchers emerged from the bird's belly, each one carrying a story written in blood and bandages. What do we have? Sarah called out to the flight medic as they transferred the first patient. Kurdish fighter, female, approximately 25 years old, the medic shouted over the engine noise. Single GSW to the upper torso. Entry wound suggests high-velocity rifle round. No exit wound visible. Sarah's blood chilled. High velocity. Rifle round. Sniper. She looked down at the woman on the stretcher. Despite the oxygen mask covering half her face, Sarah could see the fighter was conscious and tracking movement. Her eyes met Sarah's, and in them, Sarah saw not just pain but fury. Can you tell me your name? Sarah asked in Kurdish, one of the languages she'd been studying since her deployment. Zara, the woman whispered through the mask. Zara Karim. You're safe now, Zara. We're going to take good care of you. But even as Sarah said the words, she couldn't shake the feeling that safety was an illusion in this place. The second stretcher carried an older man, unconscious with multiple shrapnel wounds. The third held a young boy, couldn't be more than 14, with a leg wound that had been expertly field-dressed. As they wheeled the patients toward the medical facility, Sarah noticed something that made her stomach drop. The boy's bandages showed a distinctive wound pattern. She'd seen it before in her trauma training. The perfectly round entry wound of a precision rifle shot. Someone was deliberately targeting children. Bay 1 for the chest wound, Sarah directed. Dr. Martinez needs to see her immediately. Bay 3 for the shrapnel victim, and Bay 2 for the leg wound. As the medical team dispersed with their patients, Sarah found herself alone with her thoughts for just a moment. The flight medic was still shutting down his aircraft, and she approached him. Where did you pick them up? She asked. Small village about 20 clicks northeast of here. Nasty scene. The medic pulled off his helmet, revealing a face that looked older than his years. Sniper had them pinned down for hours. Systematic targeting took out anyone who tried to help the wounded. Did you see any sign of the shooter? The medic shook his head. Professional work. By the time we arrived, he was long gone. But double quotes, he paused, looking troubled. The locals say this isn't the first time. Same ammo, same precision. They're calling him the White Death. Sarah had heard that name before, but hearing it from someone who'd seen the aftermath made it real in a way that rumors never could. Any idea where he's operating from? Could be anywhere in those mountains. Perfect sniper country up there long. Sight lines, multiple escape routes, plenty of concealment. The medic looked at her curiously. Why the interest? You're medical, right? Just trying to understand what we're dealing with. It was a partial truth. Sarah was trying to understand, but not just from a medical perspective. Something about the systematic nature of the attacks, the targeting of medical personnel and children, triggered a response in her that went beyond her role as a nurse. She'd grown up in a military family. Her father had been a Marine sniper in Kurdish, Iraq. Her brother was Special Forces, and her grandfather had served in Vietnam. The Chen family had a long tradition of military service, and Sarah had absorbed tactical knowledge, almost by osmosis during family gatherings. She knew that defeating a sniper required understanding their patterns, their preferred positions, and their escape routes. It required thinking like a hunter. Chen. Dr. Martinez's voice interrupted her thoughts. I need you in surgery. The chest wound victim has a bullet fragment near her heart. Sarah hurried into the surgical bay, pushing her tactical thoughts aside. Zara Karim was on the table, her dark eyes still alert despite the trauma she'd endured. She's been asking for you, Dr. Martinez said as Sarah scrubbed it in. Won't let us put her under until she talks to you. Sarah approached the table. I'm here, Zara. What is it? Zara grabbed Sarah's hand with surprising strength. He killed my daughter, she whispered in Kurdish. My little Dilan. She was only 10 years old. The words hit Sarah like a physical blow. She looked down at this woman, this mother who'd lost everything to a madman with a rifle. I'm so sorry, Sarah said, but the words felt inadequate. He watches, Zara continued, her grip tightening. From the old monastery ruins on Candle Mountain. 2 days he watched our village before he started shooting. I saw the sun reflect off his scope. Dr. Martinez was looking at them impatiently. Chen, we need to get her into surgery. But Sarah's mind was racing. Candle Mountain was within visual range of their compound. If the sniper was using the monastery ruins as a base of operations, he could observe their facility. He could be watching them right now. Thank you, Sarah told Zara. Rest now. We'll take care of you. As Dr. Martinez began the surgery, Sarah found herself unable to focus entirely on her duties. Her training told her to assist with the operation, to focus on saving the life in front of her. But another part of her mind was calculating distances, elevation differences, and sight lines. Candle Mountain was approximately 8 kilometers northeast of their position. The monastery ruins would provide excellent concealment and multiple escape routes. A skilled sniper could easily observe their compound from there and select targets at will. More importantly, if he was watching them operate, he would know their routines, their schedules, and their vulnerabilities. The surgery lasted 2 hours. Dr. Martinez successfully removed the bullet fragment and repaired the damage to Zara's lung. She would live, though she'd carry the scars of this day forever. As they wheeled her to recovery, Sarah made a decision that would have surprised her just hours earlier. She was going to find this sniper, not as part of any official mission. The military had its own protocols for dealing with enemy combatants, and those protocols didn't include nurses going on solo hunting expeditions. But Sarah had skills that nobody in the compound knew about. Skills her father had taught her during long summers at the family ranch in Montana. She was an expert marksman. Growing up, she'd spent countless hours on the shooting range with her father and brother. By the time she was 16, she could hit a target at 600 meters with iron sights. Her father had insisted that every member of the Chen family know how to handle a rifle, not just for sport, but for protection. In this world, he'd told her, sometimes being a good person isn't enough. Sometimes you have to be a good person with a gun. The memory made her smile grimly as she completed her post-surgery duties. Her father would probably have something to say about a Navy nurse going after an enemy sniper, but she thought he'd understand the principle. Some battles couldn't be won with medicine alone. Sarah spent the rest of her shift cataloging everything she knew about the sniper. His pattern of attacks, his preferred targets, the timing of his operations. By evening, she had a profile that would have impressed any military intelligence analyst. The White Death was methodical, patient, and highly skilled. He preferred morning operations, probably to take advantage of certain lighting conditions. He targeted medical personnel first, then children, then anyone who tried to help the wounded. His shots were consistently fatal, suggesting excellent marksmanship training, but he also had weaknesses. He used the same hide site repeatedly, which meant he was either overconfident or limited by terrain. His escape routes would be predetermined, which made him predictable. And his hatred of medical workers meant he couldn't resist certain types of targets, like a lone nurse conducting a medical supply run to one of the outlying villages. The plan that formed in Sarah's mind was simple, dangerous, and probably insane. But it was also the only way she could see to stop the killing. She was going to make herself bait. As darkness fell over the compound, Sarah began gathering the equipment she would need. Her personal rifle, a scoped hunting rifle she'd brought from home and kept locked in her footlocker, ammunition, night vision equipment borrowed from the security office, medical supplies that would give her a legitimate reason to be traveling alone. And one more thing, a piece of equipment that would surprise the sniper when he finally took his shot. Sarah had done her research on body armor during her military training. The standard issue plates were designed to stop rifle rounds, but they were bulky and obvious. What she needed was something that would look like normal clothing but provide protection against a high-velocity round. The level III soft armor vest she'd acquired through unofficial channels was thin enough to wear under her uniform, but rated to stop most rifle rounds. It wouldn't make her invincible, but it would give her a crucial advantage in the moment when the sniper thought he'd made a kill shot. As she prepared her gear, Sarah thought about Zara Karim's words, "He killed my daughter." Somewhere in the mountains, a monster was hunting innocent people for sport. The military would eventually track him down, but how many more children would die before that happened? How many more mothers would lose their daughters? Sarah checked her rifle one more time, ensuring the scope was properly zeroed. Tomorrow morning, she was going to give the White Death exactly what he wanted, a high-value target moving alone through his kill zone. What he wouldn't expect was that his target would be shooting back. The compound settled into its nighttime routine around her. Guards took their positions, medical staff completed their shifts, and the wounded rested in their beds. But Sarah Chen sat by her window, looking out at the dark silhouette of Kandil Mountain, and planned a hunt. She was done being just a nurse. Tomorrow she's going to war. The tension is building. If you're enjoying this story, hit that like button and let me know in the comments which character you're rooting for. Your support helps me create more incredible stories like this one. Sarah woke before dawn, her internal clock attuned to the rhythm of military life. The compound was quiet except for the distant murmur of guards changing shifts and the soft hum of generators powering essential equipment. She dressed carefully, layering the concealed body armor beneath her standard uniform. The vest was barely noticeable under her loose-fitting medical tunic, but its weight reminded her that today would be different from any other day of her deployment. Her rifle case was disguised as a medical equipment transport container. To any casual observer, she was simply conducting a routine medical supply run to one of the outlying villages, exactly the kind of high-value, isolated target that had attracted the sniper's attention before. "Chun, you're up early." Dr. Martinez appeared in the doorway of the equipment room where Sarah was checking her supplies. "Supply runs to Bayil village," she replied, keeping her voice casual. "They requested additional antibiotics and pain medication." It wasn't entirely a lie. Bayil village had made such a request, though Sarah had volunteered for the run when others had deemed it too dangerous given the recent sniper activity. "Alone?" Dr. Martinez frowned. "Protocols suggest we shouldn't be conducting solo runs with the security situation as it is. The Kurdish escorts are meeting me at checkpoint 3, Sarah said smoothly. 2-vehicle convoy from there, standard procedure." Another partial truth. Kurdish fighters would indeed escort her to the village, but they didn't know about her real plan to separate from the convoy and conduct her own reconnaissance mission in the mountains. Dr. Martinez still looked troubled. "Be careful out there. Chun, that sniper is still active, and you'd make a tempting target for someone trying to disrupt medical operations. I'll keep my head down, Sarah promised. If only he knew how literally she meant that. An hour later, Sarah was behind the wheel of a medical transport vehicle, driving toward the mountains as the sun painted the peaks in shades of gold and orange. The morning air was crisp and clear, perfect conditions for long-range shooting. Her radio crackled with the morning check-in from base. Medical Transport 1, this is base, radio check. Base, this is Medical Transport 1, Lima Charlie. En route to Checkpoint 3 for escort link-up. Copy, Medical Transport 1, the weather is clear, visibility unlimited. Be advised, no unusual activity reported in your sector. Sarah acknowledged the transmission, but her eyes were scanning the mountainsides ahead. Somewhere up there, the White Death was probably beginning his morning routine. Checking his equipment, selecting his targets, preparing for another day of terror. Today, she was going to give him a target he'd never forget. Checkpoint 3 was a Kurdish military outpost, positioned at the intersection of two mountain roads. As promised, 2 Kurdish fighters were waiting for her young men she recognized from previous convoy duties. "Good morning, Nurse Chen," said the older of the two in accented English. His name was Hakim, and he'd been one of the fighters she'd treated for a shrapnel wound the previous month. "Ready for the village run?" "Ready," Sarah confirmed. "How's the security situation up ahead?" Hakim's expression darkened. "Quiet this morning. But quiet can be dangerous in these mountains. We stay alert." The convoy proceeded up the winding mountain road toward Bayul village. Sarah drove in the middle position, with Hakim's vehicle leading and the second Kurdish vehicle following. Standard protective formation. But as they approached the halfway point to the village, Sarah began implementing her deception. "Base, this is Medical Transport 1, she radioed. "Experiencing engine trouble. Convoy stopping for mechanical check." "Copy, Medical Transport 1. Do you require assistance?" "Negative at this time. Kurdish escort assessing the situation." "Will advise." Sarah pulled her vehicle to the side of the road and popped the hood, creating the appearance of a legitimate mechanical problem. When Hakim approached to check on her, she was ready with her story. "Seems to be running hot," she told him, pointing to the temperature gauge. "I think I can fix it, but it'll take some time. Why don't you and your men continue to the village and tell them I'll be alone shortly?" Hakim looked troubled. "Not good to leave you alone, Nurse Chun. Dangerous roads." "I'll stay on the radio. If I can't fix it in 30 minutes, I'll call for a pickup." Sarah managed what she hoped was a confident smile. "I've got tools and know my way around an engine." Military training. It was true Sarah had learned basic vehicle maintenance during her Navy training. But the engine trouble was entirely fictional. Her vehicle was running perfectly. After some hesitation, Hakim agreed to continue to the village. Sarah watched his convoy disappear around a bend in the road, then quickly retrieved her rifle from its hiding place and began the most dangerous part of her plan. According to her analysis, the sniper's preferred hide site was in the ruins of the monastery on a ridge approximately 2 kilometers northeast of her current position. The terrain was rocky and provided good concealment, but there was only one practical route to reach the ruins while maintaining observation of the road below. Sarah began climbing. She moved carefully, using natural cover and staying low. Her father's training served her well: how to read terrain, how to move without creating dust clouds or noise, how to remain invisible to an observer even in daylight. The climb took 45 minutes. By the time she reached a position where she could observe the monastery ruins, the sun was high enough to create the harsh shadows and bright spots that snipers often use to mask their positions. Sarah settled into a concealed position behind a cluster of boulders and began her own surveillance. The monastery had been abandoned for decades, its stone walls crumbling and its roof long since collapsed. but the structure still provided excellent cover for someone wanting to observe the valley below while remaining hidden from casual observation. Sarah studied the ruins through her rifle scope, looking for any sign of occupation. A glint of metal, movement in the shadows, anything that would reveal the presence of the White Death. For an hour, she saw nothing. Then, as she was beginning to wonder if her intelligence had been wrong, she caught at a brief flash of reflected sunlight from one of the monastery's upper windows. Exactly the kind of reflection that would come from a rifle scope. Sarah smiled grimly. Found you. Now came the most dangerous part of her plan. She needed to confirm that the sniper was indeed in position and force him to reveal himself. To do that, she needed to present him with an irresistible target. Sarah keyed her radio. Base, this is Medical Transport 1. Engine repairs complete. Proceeding to the village. She climbed down from her observation position and returned to her vehicle, knowing that if her analysis was correct, the sniper was watching her every move through his scope. She made a show of checking under the hood one more time, then got back into the driver's seat. But instead of driving toward the village, Sarah pulled her vehicle into a position that would give the sniper a clear shot, while providing her with maximum protection. She positioned the engine block between herself and the monastery ruins, knowing that even a high-powered rifle round would have difficulty penetrating that much metal. Then she did something that would have terrified anyone who knew her plan. She got out of the vehicle and began walking around it, apparently checking for mechanical problems. To any observer, especially one looking through a rifle scope from 2 kilometers away, she presented a perfect target. Sarah's heart pounded as she moved around the vehicle, but her movements remained controlled and purposeful. She was counting on the body armor beneath her uniform, but more importantly, she was counting on her analysis of the sniper's psychology. The White Death was a hunter who took pride in precision kills. He wouldn't take a rushed shot at a moving target when he could wait for the perfect opportunity. He would want a clean, still target that would showcase his marksmanship. Sarah provided exactly that opportunity. She stopped beside the driver's door and pretended to examine something on the ground, presenting her profile to the monastery ruins. For 30 seconds, she remained perfectly still, the kind of stationary target that any sniper would find irresistible. The shot came exactly when she expected it. The rifle crack echoed off the mountains as the bullet struck her center mass, exactly where a heart shot should be. The impact threw her backward against the vehicle, and she crumpled to the ground as if the shot had been fatal. But the body armor had done its job. Instead of penetrating her chest, the bullet had been stopped by the advanced ceramic plates, spreading its impact across the vest's surface. It felt like being hit with a sledgehammer, driving the air from her lungs and leaving her gasping, but she was alive, conscious, and very angry. Sarah lay motionless beside her vehicle, fighting to control her breathing while she waited for the sniper's next move. If her analysis was correct, he would want to confirm his kill before moving to his extraction point. That meant getting closer. Through slitted eyes, Sarah watched the monastery ruins. For 10 minutes nothing moved. Then she caught sight of a figure in camouflage clothing moving down from the ruins toward the road. The range was too great for her to make out details, but the movement pattern was systematic and careful, exactly what she'd expect from a professional sniper conducting a tactical movement. The White Death was coming to admire his work. Sarah remained motionless, her rifle hidden beneath her body where she'd positioned it before taking the shot. Her breathing was shallow and controlled, her eyes barely open. To any observer, she looked like a corpse. The sniper approached cautiously, using natural cover and taking his time. Sarah had to admire his fieldcraft. Even knowing his approximate position, she had difficulty tracking his movement. He was very good at his job, but he'd made one crucial mistake. He'd assumed that just a nurse would be an easy target. 20 minutes after taking his shot, The sniper emerged from the rocks beside the road, approximately 50 meters from Sarah's position. He was dressed in military-style camouflage, carried a high-end rifle with an advanced scope, and moved with the confidence of someone who'd never encountered serious opposition. Sarah could see his face, now middle-aged, weathered with the kind of focused intensity she associated with career soldiers. But there was something else in his expression as he looked at her motionless form: satisfaction. He was enjoying this. The sniper approached to within 20 meters, his rifle at the ready, but not aimed directly at her. Why would it be? She was clearly dead. Sarah waited until he was close enough that missing would be impossible. Then she rolled over and put 3 rounds center mass. The sniper's expression of satisfaction transformed into shock, then pain, then nothing at all as he collapsed onto the rocky ground. His rifle clattered away from his motionless hands. Sarah lay still for another 5 minutes, watching for any sign of movement. When she was satisfied that the threat was neutralized, she slowly got to her feet. Her chest ached where the bullet had impacted her vest, but the armor had held. She was bruised but functional. She approached the sniper's body carefully, her rifle ready. Up close, she could see that he was wearing the uniform of a foreign military unit, one of the groups that had been conducting operations against Kurdish civilians. His rifle was a high-end precision weapon with modifications that suggested serious military training. This had been no amateur. Sarah keyed her radio. "But base, this is Medical Transport 1. I need immediate extraction and a security team. I have encountered and neutralized an enemy sniper. One hostile Kia." The response was immediate and incredulous. "Medical Transport 1, say again? Did you say you neutralized an enemy sniper?" "Affirmative, base. The individual known as the White Death is dead. I repeat, the threat is neutralized." There was a long pause before the radio crackled back to life. "Medical Transport 1, extraction team en route. Maintain your position and await pickup." Sarah sat down on a boulder beside the road and began checking her equipment. Her vest had done its job, though she'd need a new ceramic plate. Her rifle had performed flawlessly. Her hands were steady, her breathing controlled. She felt different, not just because she'd killed someone, though that was part of it, but because she'd proven something to herself that she'd never been entirely sure of before. When push came to shove, she wasn't just a nurse, she was a warrior. 20 minutes later, helicopters filled the sky above her position. Security teams rappelled down to secure the area while medical personnel checked her for injuries. Commander Walsh himself arrived on the second helicopter, his expression mixing relief, amazement, and something that might have been reproach. "Chen," he said as she finished giving her initial debrief to the security team. "What the hell did you think you were doing?" Sarah looked up at him, then at the body of the sniper, then back at her commanding officer. "My job," she said simply, but they both knew it had been something more than that. She'd been hunting the interrogation room. At the base was sparse and functional metal table, 2 chairs, and a recording device that hummed quietly in the corner. Sarah sat across from Commander Walsh and a man she didn't recognize, someone in civilian clothes with the kind of alert eyes that suggested intelligence work. "Let's go through this one more time," Commander Walsh said, consulting his notes. "You conducted an unauthorized solo operation against an enemy sniper, using yourself as bait, and engaged the target with your personal weapon." "That's correct, sir." "Without notifying your superiors or requesting backup?" "Yes, sir." The civilian leaned forward. "Miss Chen, I'm Agent Harrison from Military Intelligence. I need to understand how a Navy hospital corpsman managed to outthink and outfight a professional sniper with over 40 confirmed kills." Sarah had been expecting this question. "My father was a Marine sniper. He taught me to shoot and to think tactically. I grew up around military personnel and absorbed a lot of knowledge." Your personnel file mentions recreational shooting, Harrison continued, but nothing approaching the level of skill you demonstrated today. Taking down a target at 50 meters while impersonating a corpse and dealing with the physiological effects of being shot yourself. That's not recreational level marksmanship. I've always been a good shot. Harrison smiled thinly. Good enough to qualify for military sniper school, according to the range reports from your basic training. Why didn't you pursue that path? Sarah hesitated. This was getting into territory she'd hoped to avoid. I wanted to save lives, not take them. And yet today you took a life. Today I saved lives. That sniper would have killed dozens more civilians if he'd been allowed to continue operating. Commander Walsh intervened. Agent Harrison, Corpsman Chun's actions, while unauthorized, resulted in the elimination of a high-priority target that conventional forces had been unable to locate. I think we should focus on the positive outcome rather than questioning her motives, but Harrison wasn't finished. I've been reviewing intelligence reports from across the region. The individual you killed today, we've identified him as Dmitri Volkov, a former Spetsnaz operator turned mercenary. He's been linked to sniper attacks against medical personnel in 3 different countries over the past 2 years. Sarah felt a chill. He was targeting medical workers specifically? Not just targeting them, hunting them. Volkov had a psychological profile that suggested he viewed medical personnel as symbols of weakness in warfare. He believed that eliminating healers would break civilian morale and force populations to submit to military occupation. The weight of that revelation settled over Sarah like a heavy blanket. She hadn't just stopped a sniper, she'd stopped a predator who saw her profession as something to be eliminated. There's more, Harrison continued. Volkov wasn't working alone. Intelligence suggests he was part of a network of mercenary snipers operating throughout the region. Taking him down may have disrupted their operations, but it's also likely to draw attention to you personally. Commander Walsh frowned. What kind of attention? The kind that involves professional killers wanting revenge for the death of their colleague. Harrison's expression was grim. Ms. Chun, you've made yourself a target. Sarah processed this information with the same methodical approach she used for medical diagnoses. Assess the symptoms, understand the problem, develop a treatment plan. How many others are there? She asked. We believe 3 to 5 active operators, though exact numbers are difficult to confirm. They work independently but coordinate through encrypted communications. Harrison pulled out a tablet and showed her satellite photos. These are locations where we've detected similar attack patterns to Volkov's work. The images show devastated medical facilities, abandoned villages, and scattered refugee camps. Each represented dozens of dead civilians and medical workers. We need to stop them, Sarah said. Harrison and Commander Walsh exchanged a look. We? Commander Walsh raised an eyebrow. Chun, you're a hospital corpsman, not a special operations soldier. What happened today was extraordinary, but, sir, with respect, these people are hunting my patients and my colleagues. They're targeting medical workers because they see us as weak links in the defense of civilian populations. Sarah's voice carried a steel that surprised even her. Maybe it's time they learned that some medical workers shoot back. Harrison was studying her with renewed interest. You're suggesting what exactly? I'm suggesting that a nurse conducting medical supply runs to remote villages would be an irresistible target for snipers who specialize in hunting medical personnel, especially a nurse who's already killed one of their associates. The room fell silent except for the hum of the recording device. Finally, Commander Walsh spoke. That's not a medical mission, Chun. That's a combat operation. Medical personnel in war zones are already combat personnel, sir. We just usually don't acknowledge it. Sarah leaned forward. These snipers are disrupting medical operations throughout the region. Conventional forces can't locate them because they move constantly and use civilian areas for concealment. But they'll come to us if we give them the right bait. Harrison was making notes on his tablet. You're talking about using yourself as a lure for professional killers. That's not a mission, it's suicide. Only if they're better than I am. Sarah's quiet confidence filled the room. Today proved they're not. After another long silence, Harrison closed his tablet. I need to make some calls. Commander Walsh, I recommend we suspend this discussion until I can consult with higher authorities. Agreed. Chen, you're confined to base pending further orders. And before you ask, that's not a punishment, it's protection. If there really are other snipers out there looking for revenge, this compound is the safest place for you right now. Sarah nodded, though she suspected that safety was going to be a relative concept for the foreseeable future. As she left the interrogation room, Sarah's mind was already working on the tactical problem. Professional snipers seeking revenge would be cautious, methodical, and patient. They'd study her patterns, her habits, her vulnerabilities. They'd wait for the perfect opportunity to strike, unless she struck first. But that would require resources, intelligence, and official support that she didn't currently have. For now, she was confined to base, probably under some form of surveillance. With limited ability to take initiative, Sarah returned to her quarters and began doing what military personnel do when faced with an uncertain situation. She prepared. She cleaned her rifle, inventoried her equipment, and reviewed everything she knew about sniper tactics and counter-sniper operations. She also did something that would have surprised her superiors. She began studying the intelligence reports that Harrison had shown her, memorizing locations, patterns, and timelines. If there were other snipers out there hunting medical workers, she was going to be ready for them. The irony wasn't lost on her. 6 months ago, she'd been a nursing student focused on saving lives and healing wounds. Now she was planning hunting strategies against professional killers. But as she thought about Zara Karim's daughter, about the dead children in the satellite, photos about all the medical workers who'd been murdered for the crime of trying to help people, Sarah felt no conflict about her transformation. Some people needed to be healed. Others needed to be stopped. And sometimes, those were the same missions. Knock at her door interrupted her planning. Come in. Dr. Martinez entered, carrying 2 cups of coffee and wearing an expression she'd never seen before, something between respect and concern. Thought you might need this, he said, offering her one of the cups. Thank you. Sarah accepted the coffee gratefully. I suppose everyone knows by now. Hard to keep something like this quiet on a base this size. Martinez sat down across from her. Mind if I ask you something? Go ahead. Why didn't you tell us you could do this? Fight, I mean. Handle yourself in combat situations. Sarah considered the question. Because it wasn't relevant to my job. I'm here to provide medical care, not to hunt enemy combatants. But today it was relevant. Today was different. Today someone was specifically targeting medical personnel, and our patients were dying because of it. Sarah met his eyes. Sometimes the best medicine is prevention. Martinez nodded slowly. The staff is talking. Some of them are calling you a hero. Others are worried about what happens next. What do you think? I think, Martinez said carefully, that you did what needed to be done. But I also think you've changed something fundamental about how you see your role here. And I'm not sure that's entirely a good thing. Sarah understood his concern. The line between healer and warrior was one that medical professionals weren't supposed to cross. It violated something fundamental about the medical oath to first do no harm. But in a war zone, sometimes doing no harm to your patients required doing significant harm to their enemies. Doctor, can I ask you something? Sure. If someone was shooting at your patients while you were trying to operate, would you continue operating or would you neutralize the threat? Martinez was quiet for a long moment. I'd want to neutralize the threat. But I'd probably try to get security forces to do it for me. And if security forces weren't available? If it was just you, your patients, and the person trying to kill them? Then I suppose I'd do whatever was necessary to protect my patients. Sarah nodded. That's all I did today. I protected my patients. The fact that I had to kill someone to do it doesn't change the fundamental nature of what I was doing. Martinez finished his coffee and stood to leave. Maybe you're right. But be careful, Chen. Once you cross certain lines, it can be difficult to find your way back. After he left, Sarah sat alone with her thoughts and her plans. Martinez was probably right about crossing lines, but Sarah wasn't sure she wanted to find her way back. For the first time since deploying to this war zone, she felt like she was making a real difference. Not just treating the wounded after they'd been hurt, but preventing them from being wounded in the first place. That night, as she lay in her bunk listening to the distant sounds of the mountain wind, Sarah made a decision that would shape everything that followed. If other snipers were coming for her, she wasn't going to wait for them to arrive. She was going hunting again. 3 days after Sarah's encounter with Volkov, the first sign of retaliation came in the form of intercepted communications. Agent Harrison found her in the medical bay, where she was conducting routine equipment maintenance, a task that had become more meditation than necessity since being confined to base. "We need to talk," he said quietly. Privately. Sarah followed him to a secure briefing room she hadn't seen before, 1 level underground with walls that hummed with electronic countermeasures. 15 hours ago, our signals intelligence intercepted encrypted communications between known mercenary elements operating in the region. Harrison began without preamble. Your name came up specifically. He activated a wall display showing translated transcripts of radio intercepts. Volf 2 to pack leader, the nurse eliminated GHOST. Repeat, the American nurse took down Ghost. Pack leader to all wolves, new priority target designated. American medical personnel, designation Nightingale. Authorization for immediate termination granted. Sarah read the communications with professional detachment, but she felt a familiar cold anger building in her chest. They were calling her Nightingale. Apparently, even professional killers recognize the irony of a healer turned hunter. How many operators are we talking about? She asked. Based on the communication patterns, we believe 4 additional snipers are in country. They're converging on this area, and they're specifically hunting you. Harrison brought up satellite imagery on the display. This is where it gets interesting. These aren't random mercenaries looking for revenge. They're part of a coordinated network with military-grade equipment and intelligence support. The images showed movement patterns across the region, vehicles, personnel, and equipment being repositioned in a clear pattern that's centered on their base. They're setting up a coordinated operation, Sarah observed. Multiple firing positions, overlapping fields of fire, escape routes planned in advance. Harrison looked at her sharply. How did you never mind? Yes, that's exactly what they're doing. Professional encirclement tactics designed to eliminate a high-value target while minimizing their own exposure. Sarah studied the imagery more carefully. The movement patterns reminded her of something her father had taught her about pack hunting, how wolves coordinated their attacks to isolate and eliminate threats to their territory. When? She asked. Intelligence suggests they'll be in position within 72 hours. After that ... double quotes, Harrison shrugged. They'll wait for the right opportunity. Could be days, could be weeks, or I could give them the opportunity they're looking for. Absolutely not. Commander Walsh's voice came from behind them as he entered the briefing room. Chun, I know what you're thinking, and the answer is no. We're not using a Hospital Corpsman as bait for a coordinated sniper operation. Sarah turned to face her. Commanding officer. Sir, with respect, they're coming for me regardless of what we do. The only question is whether we control the circumstances of the encounter, or whether they do. We have other options. We can transfer you out of the region, Bring in special operations teams to hunt these snipers and increase base security. Protocols, all of which will take time and resources while these snipers continue killing medical personnel throughout the region. Sarah's voice carried quiet conviction. Sir, I've studied their operation. They're mobile, they use civilian areas for concealment, and they've avoided conventional forces for months. Special operations teams will spend weeks trying to locate them while they kill more nurses, doctors, and aid workers. Harrison was watching the exchange with interest. What are you proposing, specifically? I'm proposing we give them exactly what they want me, apparently isolated and vulnerable, conducting routine medical duties outside the protected compound. Sarah moved to the display and began pointing out locations. But instead of actually being vulnerable, we turned there. Ambush into our ambush. Commander Walsh crossed his arms. Elaborate. These snipers are converging on our area because they believe I'm confined to base and predictable. They're planning to wait for me to make a routine movement outside the compound and then eliminate me using coordinated fields of fire. Sarah traced patterns on the satellite imagery. But what if we know their positions in advance? What if we let them set up their ambush, and then we ambush the ambushers? That would require precise intelligence on their locations and a coordinated response team, Harrison said thoughtfully. We can get the intelligence, Sarah replied. Professional snipers have to conduct reconnaissance of their target areas. They'll want to observe my movements, study my patterns, and identify the best locations for their shots. That means they'll be exposed to counter-surveillance. Commander Walsh was beginning to look interested despite his reservations. And the response team? We don't need a large team. These snipers are positioned to engage a single target me. They won't be prepared for simultaneous attacks on multiple positions by coordinated marksmen. Sarah turned back to the display. I know people who could help with this operation. People with the skills to take down professional snipers in their own hide sites. What people? Harrison asked. Sarah hesitated. She was about to reveal connections that she'd kept private since her deployment. My brother is in the Special Forces. My father's former unit has connections to current sniper teams. If I could make some calls. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Commander Walsh spoke first. Chun, are you suggesting we conduct an unofficial operation using personnel who aren't officially assigned to this theater? I'm suggesting we solve a problem that's killing medical workers throughout the region, using the resources most likely to be successful. Sarah met his eyes. Sir, these snipers have killed 43 medical personnel in the past 6 months. How many more will die while we go through official channels? Harrison was making notes again. This conversation is becoming very complicated from a legal and operational standpoint. Sometimes complicated problems require complicated solutions. Sarah replied. Commander Walsh walked to the display and studied the satellite imagery for several minutes. When he turned back to Sarah, his expression was unreadable. I emphasize if we were to consider such an operation, what would you need? 48 hours of apparent normal routine to let them establish their positions. Communication equipment to coordinate with supporting elements. And official documentation that makes this a legitimate military operation rather than a personal vendetta. The last part might be the most difficult, Harrison observed. Maybe not, Commander Walsh said slowly. The elimination of enemy snipers. Targeting medical personnel could fall under force protection protocols. If we document this properly. Sarah felt a surge of anticipation. You're considering it? I'm considering the fact that conventional approaches haven't worked, and that unconventional problems sometimes require unconventional solutions. Commander Walsh looked at both Sarah and Harrison. But if we do this, it gets done right. Military. Precision. Clear objectives. Proper authorization. Harrison nodded. I can provide intelligence support and help with the legal framework. But the tactical planning would need to come from people with the appropriate expertise. Sarah smiled for the first time since the briefing began. I can make some calls. As they prepared to leave the briefing room, Commander Walsh stopped her. Chun, I need to ask you something directly. Are you prepared for what this might become? If we do this operation, you'll be directly responsible for multiple deaths. That's a significant step beyond what happened with Volkov. Sarah thought about Zara Karim's daughter, about the medical workers whose names appeared in intelligence reports as casualties, about all the people who would continue to die if these snipers remained operational. Sir, I took an oath to preserve life and serve those who fight to protect freedom. Sometimes preserving life requires taking life. She paused. I'm prepared for whatever this becomes. Commander Walsh nodded slowly. Then make your calls. But remember, once we start this operation, there's no going back. You'll have crossed a line that most medical personnel never even approach. As Sarah left the briefing room, she was already mentally composing the messages she'd need to send. Her brother Marcus would understand immediately. Her father's former unit commander would know people who could help. For the first time since Volkov's death, Sarah felt like she was moving forward instead of simply reacting to events. The network of mercenary snipers thought they were hunting a lone nurse. They were about to discover they'd declared war on a family with a very particular set of skills. And that family was about to teach them the difference between hunting prey and hunting predators. The secure satellite phone connection crackled with static as Sarah waited for her brother's voice. She was alone in Commander Walsh's office, which had been cleared for classified communications, and the weight of what she was about to ask pressed down on her like a physical burden. Marcus Chun speaking. The familiar voice, even distorted by encryption and distance, brought a surge of emotion Sarah hadn't expected. Marcus, it's Sarah. A pause. Little sister? What are you doing on a secure line? I need a favor, a big one. Another pause, longer this time. Marcus had spent 8 years in special forces, including multiple deployments to some of the world's most dangerous places. He knew that secure calls from war zones usually meant someone was in serious trouble. Talk to me. Sarah spent 10 minutes outlining the situation, the sniper attacks on medical personnel, her encounter with Volkov, and the intelligence indicating that 4 additional snipers were converging on her position. Marcus listened without interruption, asking only occasional tactical questions. When she finished, there was a long silence. Sarah, you killed a professional sniper using yourself as bait. What the hell were you thinking? I was thinking that someone needed to stop him from murdering medical workers and children. And now, you want to do it again, with 4 targets instead of 1. I want to end this threat permanently. These snipers are part of a network that's been operating throughout the region. Taking them down could save hundreds of lives. Marcus was quiet for another moment. What do you need from me? The question was simple, but Sarah could hear the complexity behind it. Marcus wasn't just asking about tactical support, he was asking if she was ready to involve their family in what amounted to a private war. I need people who can take down professional snipers in prepared positions. People who understand counter-sniper operations and can coordinate with minimal support. How? Many people? 4, 1 for each target. Timeline? They'll be in position within 48 hours. After that, we need to move quickly before they establish complete operational security. Marcus was silent for so long that Sarah began to worry the connection had been lost. Marcus, I'm here. I'm just trying to decide if my little sister has lost her mind or if she's become the most dangerous person in our family. Despite the tension, Sarah smiled. Maybe both. Okay, I can get you 4 operators. 3 from my current unit, plus myself. We can be in your area of operations within 36 hours. Sarah felt a wave of relief mixed with apprehension. Marcus, this isn't officially sanctioned. If something goes wrong, Sarah, these people are hunting medical workers. As far as I'm concerned, that makes this a rescue operation. His voice carried the steel that had made him an effective special forces operator. Besides, the Chen family has a reputation to maintain. What reputation is that? We don't let people hunt our family members without consequences. After ending the call with Marcus, Sarah placed a second call to a number she'd memorized but never used. Her father's former unit commander, Colonel James Harrison, no relation to the intelligence agent. Her father had served under Harrison during the worst of the Iraq insurgency, and the two men had maintained a relationship built on mutual respect and shared experience. Colonel Harrison speaking. Sir, this is Sarah Chen, Gunnery Sergeant Robert Chen's daughter. Sarah, how's your father doing? Still trying to teach everyone in Montana how to shoot. He's doing well, sir, but I'm calling about a professional matter. The tone of the conversation shifted immediately. Go ahead. Sarah provided a condensed version of the situation, focusing on the tactical requirements rather than the personal elements. You're talking about a complex counter-sniper operation in hostile territory, Harrison said when she finished. That's not exactly routine medical duty. No, sir, it's not. But it's what the situation requires. Your father mentioned you were a gifted marksman. But there's a significant difference between target shooting and combat operations against trained opponents. I understand that, sir. That's why I'm requesting support from people with the appropriate experience. Colonel Harrison was quiet for a moment. What's your current tactical situation? Confined to base with 4 professional snipers, establish in positions for a coordinated elimination operation. Intelligence suggests they'll be ready to execute within 72 hours. Time frame for response? 48 hours maximum. After that, we lose the advantage of knowing they're still setting up. I see. Another pause. Sarah, I'm going to ask you the same question I'd ask any operator requesting support for a high-risk mission. Are you prepared to accept full responsibility for the consequences of this operation? The question hit Sarah harder than she'd expected. Colonel Harrison wasn't just asking if she was ready to kill people. He was asking if she was ready to accept responsibility for involving her family and father's former colleagues in what could become a very dangerous situation. Yes, sir, I am. Then I can provide additional support. 2 operators from my current advisory team, plus intelligence and communications assistants. But Sarah? Yes, sir? Your father's going to hear about this eventually. You might want to call him before he hears it from someone else. That conversation was going to be the most difficult of all. Robert Chen answered on the second ring, as if he'd been expecting her call. Hi, Dad. Sarah, I just got a very interesting call from Colonel Harrison. Sarah closed her eyes. He works fast. He wanted to make sure I knew what my daughter was planning before his people deployed to support her operation. Her father's voice was carefully neutral. You want to tell me how a Navy hospital corpsman ended up planning a multi-team counter-sniper operation? Sarah explained everything from the beginning: Volkov's attacks on medical personnel, her decision to use herself as bait, the intelligence about additional snipers converging on her position. Her father listened without comment until she finished. Sarah, when I taught you to shoot, I never imagined you'd end up in a situation like this. I know, Dad, but these people are hunting medical workers. They're killing nurses and doctors and aid workers because they see us as weak targets. And you decided to prove them wrong. I decided to protect my patients and my colleagues. Her father was quiet for a long time. When he spoke again, his voice carried a pride that surprised Sarah. Your grandfather fought in Vietnam. I fought in Iraq. Your brother's been fighting in Afghanistan and half a dozen other places most people can't pronounce. He paused. I always wondered what your war would look like. Dad, Sarah, you've got good people supporting you. Marcus knows what he's doing, and Colonel Harrison's operators are some of the best in the business. But remember once this operation starts, you're committed. There's no call-in timeout in the middle of a firefight. I understand, do you? Because what you're planning isn't just a military operation. It's a statement about who you are and what you're willing to do. To protect the people under your care. That kind of statement follows you for the rest of your life. Sarah thought about that for a moment. Dad, would you do the same thing if you were in my position? Her father chuckled. Sweetheart, if I were in your position, those snipers would already be dead. After ending the call, Sarah sat alone in Commander Walsh's office and processed what had just happened. In the space of 3 phone calls, she'd committed herself and her family to a military operation that would either neutralize a significant threat or get them all killed. But for the first time since learning about the approaching snipers, Sarah felt confident about the outcome. The mercenary network thought they were hunting an isolated nurse. Instead, they were about to face the combined expertise of a Marine sniper instructor, a Special Forces team leader, 2 advisory team operators, and 1 very angry hospital corpsman who'd grown up learning that some fights were worth having. The Chen family was going to war, and the Chen family had never lost a war. Marcus Chen arrived at the base 18 hours ahead of schedule, leading a team that looked like they'd stepped out of a recruitment poster for elite military units. Sarah watched from the operations center as his helicopter touched down, disgorging 4 men in full combat gear who moved with the fluid precision of operators who'd worked together for years. Your brother? Commander Walsh asked, standing beside her at the window, the tall one in the lead. The others must be his team. Sarah had seen Marcus in uniform before, but never in a combat environment. There was something different about him here, a focused intensity that reminded her powerfully of their father during his military days. 20 minutes later, she was face to face with her brother for the first time in 8 months. You look good for someone who's being hunted by professional killers, Marcus said, pulling her into a brief but fierce hug. You look like you've been eating nothing but MREs and caffeine. Occupational hazard. Marcus stepped back and gestured to his team. Sarah, meet the people who are going to help keep you alive. Sergeant Mike Rodriguez, Communications and Electronics Specialist. Sergeant First Class James Wilson, Sniper and Reconnaissance. Staff Sergeant David Kim, Explosives and Close Quarters Combat. Each man nodded as he was introduced, but Sarah could see them evaluating her with professional interest. They'd probably been briefed that they were supporting a hospital corpsman, not someone with actual combat experience. Gentlemen, Sarah said, meeting each of their gazes in turn. Thank you for coming. I know this isn't exactly a conventional operation. Rodriguez spoke first. Ma'am, your brother gave us the briefing. Taking down snipers who target medical personnel isn't just professional, it's personal. Half the medics I've worked with over the years are better soldiers than most infantry. The question, Wilson added, is whether you're prepared for what this is going to require. Professional snipers don't go down easy, and they're going to be in prepared positions with advantages of terrain and concealment. Sarah appreciated the directness. Sergeant, 3 days ago, I killed a Spetsnaz-trained sniper using myself as bait and a hunting rifle. I'm prepared for whatever this requires. Wilson's expression shifted subtly, moving from polite skepticism to genuine interest. Volkov? You're the one who took down Dmitri Volkov? You knew him? By reputation. He was on our target list for 6 months. We couldn't locate him. Wilson studied her with new respect. How did you manage it? I understood his psychology and gave him a target he couldn't resist. Then I shot him when he came to confirm his kill. Kim whistled softly. That's either brilliant or insane. Maybe both, Marcus said, but it worked. And now we're going to do it again, except with better planning and more firepower. Agent Harrison appeared with Colonel Harrison's 2 operators' men, who introduced themselves only as Thompson and Rodriguez, apparently a popular name in special operations. They carried themselves with the quiet confidence of people who'd spent years solving complex problems with violence. The combined briefing took place in the underground conference room, with satellite imagery, intercepted communications, and tactical maps covering every surface. Current intelligence indicates 4 enemy snipers in various stages of position establishment, Agent Harrison began. We've designated them Alpha through Delta based on their probable locations. The display showed a topographical map of the area surrounding the base, with red circles marking the suspected sniper positions. Alpha position is here, on the ridge overlooking the main road to Bayil village. Excellent sight lines to the compound, multiple escape routes through the rocks. Approximately 800 meters from the base perimeter, Sarah studied the position. That's where I'd set up if I wanted to hit someone leaving the compound for a routine medical run. Exactly. Bravo position is here, covering the secondary road to Kadir village. Charlie's position is on this hilltop to the south, with overlapping fields of fire with Alpha. Delta position is... Harrison paused. Delta position is problematic. How so? Marcus asked. It's inside the abandoned farming complex about 600 meters northeast of the compound. Close enough for precision shots with smaller caliber weapons, but also close enough to observe base activities in detail. Wilson was making notes. That's the infiltration distance. Delta isn't just planning to shoot from long range, he's planning to get close and personal. Which means he's probably the team leader, Thompson observed. Alpha, Bravo, and Charlie are support positions. Delta is the primary shooter. Sarah felt pieces clicking into place in her mind. They're not planning a coordinated long-range engagement. They're planning a precision elimination followed by coordinated suppression fire to prevent response. Explain, Commander Walsh requested. Delta gets close and takes the primary shot. Alpha, Bravo, and Charlie provide suppression fire to keep security forces pinned down while Delta extracts. Sarah traced the probable attack pattern on the map. It's a complex operation designed to ensure the target is eliminated, even if the shooting position is compromised. Marcus nodded approvingly. Good tactical analysis. Which means we need to plan our response accordingly. What are you thinking? Agent Harrison asked. We reversed their operation, Marcus replied. Instead of one primary target with 3 support positions, we hit all 4 positions simultaneously. Fast, coordinated, and overwhelming. Colonel Harrison's operator Thompson spoke up. That requires precise timing and coordination. One team moves too early and the others escape. One team moves too late and they can provide mutual support. Which is why we're going to have a distinct advantage, Sarah said. They're planning their operation around my routine movements. Which means I can control the timing of their attack. How? Wilson asked. Sarah moved to the map and pointed to the road leading toward Bayil village. Tomorrow morning, I will conduct a routine medical supply run. Except instead of the usual Kurdish escort, I travel with minimal security, just enough to look legitimate. But not enough to deter an attack. That's using yourself as bait again, Marcus pointed out, with one crucial difference. This time, I know exactly where the shooters are positioned, and I have been overwatched by people who specialize in killing snipers. Rodriguez was studying communication equipment. We'll need secure comms for coordination, and we'll need to maintain radio silence until the operation begins. I can provide encrypted tactical radios, Agent Harrison offered. Military grade. Frequency hopping, nearly impossible to intercept. Kim was examining the map from an explosives perspective. If we can get close enough to the positions in advance, we could pre-place charges for distraction or area denial. Too risky, Thompson disagreed. Professional snipers conduct security sweeps of their areas. They'd detect any explosive devices and know they'd been compromised. Sarah had been thinking about the tactical problem from a different angle. What if we don't try to get close to their positions? What if we let them get close to us? The room fell silent as everyone considered her words. Elaborate, Marcus said. Delta position is only 600 meters from the compound. That's close enough for infiltration, but it's also close enough for us to infiltrate him. Sarah pointed to the farming complex on the map. What if Delta finds someone waiting for him when he gets to his shooting position? Wilson was nodding slowly. Ambitious. But it would require getting into position before he does, which means moving at night through terrain he's probably already surveilled. Not necessarily, Sarah replied. What if the person waiting for him is someone who has a legitimate reason to be in that area, such as a nurse conducting medical checks on the abandoned farming complex to ensure it's not being used as a refugee shelter? The tactical possibilities were clear to everyone in the room. If Sarah could position herself in the farming complex before Delta arrived, she could eliminate the primary threat before the operation even began. That's extremely high risk, Commander Walsh observed. If Delta detects you before you can engage him, then I fall back on my secondary skill set, Sarah replied. I've proven I can handle professional snipers in close quarters. Marcus was studying the map intently. It could work. But you'd need backup close enough to assist if things go wrong. How close? Thompson asked. Close enough to reach her position within 60 seconds of trouble starting. Agent Harrison was making calculations. That puts backup positions here. Here and here, he said, marking locations on the map. Concealed but with rapid access to the farming complex. Sarah felt the familiar cold focus settling over her mind, the same mental state she'd experienced before engaging Volkov. When do we move? Tomorrow night, Marcus decided. We get into position under cover of darkness, then wait for them to spring their trap, which becomes our trap instead, Wilson added. As the briefing concluded and the various team members dispersed to prepare their equipment, Marcus pulled Sarah aside. Are you sure about this? He asked quietly. Taking point against the primary shooter is the most dangerous position in this operation. Sarah thought about Zara Karim, about the dead children in the intelligence photos, about all the medical workers who'd been murdered by the network these snipers represented. Marcus, someone has to stop these people. And I'm the only one there. Specifically hunting. That's not what I'm asking. I'm asking if you're prepared for what happens after this operation. Because if we succeed, word is going to spread. Other networks, other groups that target medical personnel, they're going to know that attacking medical workers can have consequences they didn't expect. Sarah considered that. You're saying this operation might put me on more target lists. I'm saying this operation might put you in a completely different category from other medical personnel. The kind of category that attracts attention from very dangerous people. Sarah looked out at the mountains where 4 professional killers were preparing to murder her. Marcus, I crossed that line 3 days ago when I killed Volkov. Tomorrow night, we're just going to finish the job. Marcus nodded slowly. Then, let's make sure we do it right. As Sarah returned to her quarters to prepare for what might be the last night of her deployment, or the last night of her life, she felt a strange sense of completion. She'd joined the military medical corps to save lives and serve others. Tomorrow night, she was going to do exactly that. Just not in the way she'd originally planned. The abandoned farming complex squatted in the valley like a collection of broken teeth, its mud brick buildings casting angular shadows in the moonlight. Sarah moved through the ruins with practiced silence, her rifle slung across. What did you think of this thrilling journey? Share your favorite moment in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story, please subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss our latest tailies. What kind of story would you like to hear next? Let me know in the comments. Your suggestions help inspire our future stories.